From the edge of the Great Red Divide to your ears, this is the Heartland Mamas. Hi, everyone. I'm Heidi Henry. How are you today? I am fabulous. Today, we're going to talk about Democratic messaging to rural America and the failure for Democrats to get our message across to farmers and ranchers and people who live in small towns. I live in rural America. I live in rural Illinois. I live in Marseilles. So it's a very small community of about 5,000 people, and I don't live in town. I live outside of town on my little farm. So, why did the Democratic message fall on my ears way back in seventh grade, where I understand it? And for other people, they just don't hear it and don't understand what we're trying to say. So, the reason the Democratic message struggles in rural America is the decision by some Democrats that are not farmers and don't live in rural America to use this part of our world as flyover country. So instead of speaking to us, they speak at us. They don't understand us at all. Um, so from the western edge of Will County down to Springfield, it's all flyover country underneath. And then from Springfield all the way outside of Illinois, there's flyover country. If you're in western Will County, you can fly all the way to California and hit just little pockets of blue here and there. So why bother where the votes don't matter? Because in Illinois, rural votes don't elect statewide offices. So that's why we don't get a lot of attention out here from gubernatorial candidates and from other statewide candidates. We will see some of them shuffle through here, but not very many. We're not going to get a visit from our senators. We're not going to get a visit from um, our state comptroller. Well, we do actually. We see Susana Mendoza a lot. So I just want you to know, Illinois Democrats and Democratic Party of the world, that we do matter out here. And even though our votes don't get you elected, our message is really important. And our messaging is so important that without it, we tend to lose our county boards, our municipal elections, our local elections, our library elections, because we don't pay attention to what goes on here. So we need to do a better job with that. So here's some of the financial realities that Democrats have delivered over the decades. Historically, farmers, mostly corporate farmers, since FDR have done better, substantially better, under Democratic leadership than under Republican leadership. Now, this is a little hard to discern because if you think about it, we're going to go into a split Congress here pretty soon. We have the presidency. We do not have the House of Representatives by a very small, very loud, very fractious margin. And we do have the Senate by a tenuous hold. But we have agriculture farm bills to pass. We have agriculture related things to pass. And it's hard to say what those 4 extra seats in the House are going to tack on to any ag bills that are going to change how farmers, and I'm going to use farmers as a quote for rural people, how they're going to view what happens under Biden, Joe Biden, under his next 2 years. And this is crucial because the Republicans think they have a lock on rural America. And right now they pretty much do. We saw that in my election because what I was trying to deliver to my community would have been brought jobs and prosperity and forward thinking. And the person that won is a backwards thinking, I don't know, extremist. And that's who's going to be representing him. So for the next 2 years, he will bring no jobs, he will bring no prosperity, he will bring no forward thinking to Illinois 75th. That's the truth of the matter because Republicans are always fighting the battle of 1950, or they're fighting, in my opponent's case, he's fighting the battle of 2020, of COVID, when we really didn't know what we were getting into. But he's still fighting mask mandates, and we're way past that. But when they can't think forward, they get stuck in the mud. And the problem is in our rural communities is we stick in the mud quite often. But what we don't always look at is the progress that's made for farmers financially under Democratic administrations. And the thing that farmers in particular have to understand is that up until Nixon, all farmers did well. Nixon, who was a Republican, told them to go big, go corporate, or go home, right? And we lost a lot of family farms. So we went, if you think about that, that kind of sped us into what happened in the farm collapse of 1980. And that's a whole other discussion because Carter got blamed for that, and it was not his fault. That fault goes clear back to Nixon. And but the immediate fault, the fixing happened, the crisis happened under Carter, and there was no way to avoid that. It's like our withdrawal from Afghanistan. The pins were put in place or pulled out of place for Biden, and he had to fall down that rabbit hole. And it's the same thing with Carter and the farm collapse when he took office, because the pins were all pulled out. He had to go down the hole. There was no way he could stop it, and that was because of interest rates. And we're going to talk about interest rates next week and how raising interest rates does not help 98% of us. That's a topic for a whole nother day, and why that's going to also kill ag in the Midwest. So, but the financial realities, if farmers look back historically, and I know we keep up to 30 years of records out here, but when you look at that, you can see where your income improves under farm bills passed under a Democratic president, under a Democratic Congress. That's the truth of the matter. And it's been like that since the Nixon administration, actually since FDR. So you have to go back to the 30s and 40s for that. Now, the problem with what happened under Nixon, where Nixon wanted everybody to go big or go home, and started what we think of as corporate farmers. And we all live out here in the rural communities. We know the farmers that have money and the family farmers, okay? We know the ones that are in the corporate structure and the ones that aren't. And the ones that aren't are always the ones that have another job, another full-time job, and maybe a side hustle in addition to farming. And they're farming ground that's been in their family for generations. So corporate farmers do that too, but they have a corporate shield, a financial shield around them, where family farmers don't have that. And right now, because of what happened under Nixon, the profession in the United States that has the highest rate of suicide are farmers, family farmers mostly. And we saw that with the collapse of the dairy industry, which was orchestrated by Walmart a few years ago. Don't ever buy your dairy at Walmart. They don't deserve it for what they did to our farmers. You know, it's not Prairie Farms, which has like a lock on our community, or Dean's, but it was Walmart that did that. And God, we must have lost 8 or 9 friends during the dairy collapse. And they weren't people who lived here in Illinois. We don't have a lot of dairy in my area anymore. But man, I always talk about how I have to work 24/7, 365. You know, I don't get time off. I don't have a weekend off ever on my little horse farm. But God, dairy is even worse. And one of the biggest dairy producers, Devin Nunes, I'm looking at you there in Mr. California, who's fighting the whole immigration thing. We need immigration reform, and we're going to do a whole talk about that too. But the thing with that is most of the dairy, in order to make things affordable to produce, have gone to illegal immigrants to work their farms, or sometimes legal immigrants. And if you go back a few years, you'll see a topic I did on the Bracero program, which is how we handled migrant farmers, migrant farm workers years ago, and it was very abusive. But we need to look at that again and then funnel it through the United Farm Workers Union and have it be a safe place for people to move back and forth to work on our farms. And that's a topic again for another day, but something we need to talk about, because all of these larger farms, all of these corporate farms, they have to do that. And most dairy and feedlots have to do that. Larger feedlots have to resort to that. And they tend to vote Republican, and Republicans are making it sure that they don't have enough help. That's just how it is. So, and a lot of that migrant labor could be an accountant, a business owner, a baker, a something else in their home country of origin, but they come up here and they end up working in agriculture. You might have Dr. So-and-so working on your farm, but he's not a doctor here in the United States, or she's not a doctor here in the United States. So we do need to understand that the financial bearings of the mistakes made by the Republican Congresses and Republican administrations in the past, especially under the Trump administration when we had all the tariffs, and still have the tariffs because you can't just undo those. This is why our suicide rate is up. You cut off our biggest trading partner, which is Mexico, for our corn, and people are going to they're going to die. You know, our governor here in Illinois stepped out multiple years and made deals with Taiwan to sell our corn and beans. Thank God. Illinois corn and beans goes to Taiwan mostly, and that's due to J.B. Pritzker. Nobody else. Nobody from the federal government was coming to help. Certainly, because Trump put on those tariffs, but he didn't care what happened to the farmers. And the corporate farmers can structure their losses. Family farmers can't. Excuse me. Okay, so here's what the Democrats have done, though, for rural America across the board. And this is something you should know, because without Democrats, we would not have had electricity in rural areas anywhere in the United States. It's all Democrats. Water management, especially in the Southwest, that's all Democrats. Broadband, excuse me, I've got a little bit of a tickle. Broadband, so computer access, that's also Democrats. And healthcare, a lot of these family farmers qualify for Medicaid and are able to get either a reduction in the cost of their health care, or of course they get Medicare as they age. So that's all Democrats. Excuse me. So we have to talk about some really serious things now. Why are the kids leaving? God bless it, this cough. The kids are leaving. When I was a kid, and when I raised my own kids, we discouraged them from going into the trades. In the 70s, if you were in the trades, you were associated with Jimmy Hoffa and the mobsters, which wasn't the the rank and file workers. That was a few of the leaders. But my parents were afraid for us to go into the trades because of that. Because that was in the 70s when we were coming of age and Jimmy Hoffa disappeared. As my husband and I raised our children, we encouraged them not to do it because of the physical disabilities my husband suffered from work-related injuries. He sacrificed his body for the city of Naperville. He is a very unhealthy person right now from all of the accidents and injuries that happened at work. So we pushed our children to go to college. Don't be a blue-collar worker. And a lot of these farmers have the same philosophy. They know the struggle that family farmers do, the struggle of having to have a full-time job, a side hustle, and farm. So they push their kids to go to college and be somebody, be something. And then their kids are, and they move away. They have seen their parents struggle year after year, year in, year out on the farm because Nixon reworked how the farm subsidies are. Family farmers do not benefit from them the way corporate farmers do. And it's a little late in the game to set up your new corporate family farm. You're behind the 8 ball at this point. So our kids grow up and they leave our area. Now my kids grew up and left because they didn't see openness and acceptance of everyone in our small rural community. They didn't see a place for them to live long term. And that's really sad. I ran into somebody, I met a new friend today in Dollar General, because when you need packing tape in rural communities, it's usually Dollar General, because it's about all that's left. They've run everybody else out of business. Walmart ran everybody out of business, and then Dollar General came in to fill in the blank. So I met a new friend who's going through the same thing. Her kids grew up in Seneca, left Seneca, not there anymore. Their jobs have taken them other places. That's a reality when you live in a rural community. The people who do stay in the rural community are either in a family-owned business that's not based in farming, or they work for one of the businesses that are out here. We have a brick factory and a steel factory and that sort of thing out here. So they work there and they have a good income and they have a good job. But most of the people pack up and leave, and they go to the more urban areas, and especially if they're not a straight white male, they leave. A lot of women leave because the opportunities for a woman in rural America is not the same as they are in corporate America. And they're tough enough in corporate America. But when you're in rural America, try as a woman an educated woman, you're not going to get anything. The jobs for educated women in rural America are very limited. This is another reason why our message doesn't cross over, because the people who would have the time to understand it and want to understand it and want to embrace it and appreciate it have left the area. They've gone up to the collar counties and the ring around the collar counties or into the big cities. So that's why that works. And that's hand in glove with education. Out here we have to fight tooth and nail for education all the time. Our school boards are populated with people who don't want to progress forward because they've been told that progress is against the Republican philosophy. Well, it is. Because if Republicans can keep you stupid and broke and disenchanted, you're going to vote for them. That's just how they are. That's their base. People who are disenchanted, upset, broken, that's their base. So if you're mad, talk to people who are really mad and join their team. And that's what they get all the time. Instead of, you know, and here's how Democrats do. Republicans will break it down into 3 or 4 words, like the Make America Great Again. And Democrats will go through the whole dissertation, and we all do it, you know we do, the whole dissertation about why America was never great, that we've done great things, but we're not great. And we have to own that, and we try to explain that to people that are like, no, make it great again, because it was great at one time. No, it was really, really good. It was at different times. 80 years ago, we were magnificent. When we look back at the accomplishments of the 1950s, of our win in World War II, and our accomplishments of the 50s and early 60s, we were about as good as we were going to get. And then the Republicans kept passing things to eat away at Medicare and Medicaid and any type of social outreach program, just like the child tax care credit. They'll argue that no one wants to work anymore because they were getting that child care tax care credit every month in the mail. So the parents didn't have to work 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their kids' head. I would rather give them that money so they can raise their own children. But that's not how Republicans see it, because nobody's making their latte fast enough. They're not flipping those burgers fast enough. Their 3rd or 4th job. And we need to understand that when we spend money out here, we spend money on things that matter. We need to make sure that people understand how they matter. That dredging our rivers so our barges of grain can get downstream matter. That's infrastructure. Illinois didn't pass a capital bill for almost 30 years. During the Trump administration, every week was supposed to be infrastructure week, and we never did anything until Biden finally came in and did it. And then we called it, what did we call it? The infrastructure bill, like the Inflation Reduction Act. It's not, I mean, it's really not how it works, Joe Manchin, but I know you wanted it to say that, you know. So that's why it's important to understand the accomplishments of infrastructure, broadband, telephone, electricity, healthcare, education. Those things are really important for people in rural America to understand, and they don't. And out here, including our local radio station, is all right-wing syndicated shows all day now. They used to at least have some news and talk on in the morning, and they have a little of that. And then it goes right into right-wing syndicated shows. That's what people hear out here. And if that's all you hear, that's all you know. After we lost the fairness doctrine in the late 80s, mid-80s, after we lost, so there's no more fair and balanced news. And those of you that were born after the mid-80s, you don't ever know. You don't ever know a world without opinionated news. But I remember Walter Cronkite, and I remember Fahey Flynn on Channel 2, and all the great ones from when I was a kid. John Drury, who lived in my neighborhood when I was growing up. All their news was fair and balanced. So if they told you things, it was only not alternative facts, it was the reality of everything. That's not what people in rural America get, because 90+% of radio stations are either religious, which is conservative, or conservative. And a lot of that is far right, alt-right politics that just confuses the hell out of everybody. So why believe anybody? Hate your local politicians. And that's not fair, because for those of us working to make a change, we've done nothing to earn that hatred. I had the opportunity to spend time in a very long line to see Joe Biden um, back in October with Congresswoman Underwood's agricultural liaison. And before she worked with Congresswoman Underwood, she worked with Randy Hultgren, who was the congressman before. And she told me that in the entire time that he served in office, he never once met with farmers. Never once. And he told her, it's because I already have their vote, I don't have to work for it. Well, he was a businessman. He didn't know anything about ag. But he always had their vote. Congresswoman Underwood sits on the Agriculture Committee, and quarterly, every 3 months, she has a meeting, an ag meeting, where the farmers can come in and talk to her. Her door is always open, because she has to bust her ass to try to get people to listen and tell her what they need, because otherwise they just don't care. And it's really important for us to remember that Adam Kinzinger, Randy Hultgren, a whole host of Republican congressmen have never felt the need to meet with the farmers except for photo ops. Except for photo ops. And occasionally debates at the Farm Bureau. That's it. Otherwise, they do not care, because they know they already have your vote without even doing a thing to earn it, with the ability to short you on the Farm Bill, with the ability to tell you that it's all about EPA restrictions when it isn't, because you know those restrictions keep farming sustainable. We don't need another dead zone or a bigger dead zone down in the Gulf of Mexico, which is what we have, because of all the fungicides, pesticides, and herbicides we have dumped into our farm fields, over applying, that have leached into our water supply, into our local rivers, into the Mississippi, and down into the Delta in Louisiana. And then it works back up where it's dead. And there's a lawsuit coming. It's working its way through the courts right now, where those lower states, they're going to sue us in the upper states for polluting their fishing grounds. It's coming. I've seen it working its way through the courts, and that's on you, farmers. I don't know if you can hear this. My dogs are having a conniption in the other room. Somebody rang the doorbell. So I apologize for that. So reaching out, how do we reach out? You can't go up to somebody who lives in rural Illinois or rural America and say, you're wrong for thinking the way you do. You go up to them and say, what is your problem? Not what is your problem, but how can I help you with the problems that you have? How can I help you with your child that has an hour and a half bus trip to school every day? How can I help you have less than a 2-hour trip in the ambulance every day? How can I help you with your education needs, with your broadband needs? Tell me what it is that you need. They may not even know what they need, but just sitting back and being a compassionate listener instead of somebody who gives them a dissertation is going to go a long way. We just started up today with what we called our North Prairie Rangers, which is a group of us out in the countryside that went out to lunch once a week. And we would talk about issues, not politically, but just things that were really weighing on us. And it gave me a chance to listen and think about things. Sometimes some of that came back for inspiration to shows previous to the pandemic. Once the pandemic hit, we stopped doing it. It also gave me reasons to write to my congressman, to Adam Kinzinger, so I could just get a canned response that had nothing to do with what I asked him. But that's the kind of congressman he was. He doesn't care. He already knows he's got agricultural votes. He didn't care because he knew he'd always get reelected, because they just assume that they can do nothing and help no one and bring no prosperity, no organization, no infrastructure, no jobs, no help, no nothing to rule America and still get reelected. And that's true. That happens every single election cycle. They bring nothing to the table, they do nothing, and they get those votes. All they do is go, yeah, I'm mad too. Vote for me. I'm mad too. You know what? Rural people, we have to be smarter than that. We have to be smarter than that. I always tell people I grew up in Glen Ellen, at the time, it was one of the wealthiest suburbs in the United States, in Illinois. Not so much anymore, but still pretty good. We had everything. I did not know, I had never firsthand seen poverty in my life until I moved to LaSalle County. Once I moved out here, I'm like, why aren't you fighting for your share? Why aren't you asking, demanding of your people that serve you? Because I was very apolitical at that time. I was a Democrat, but I was very apolitical because up in Glen Ellen, we had everything. We didn't want for anything, ever, ever. There were no pink slips to pay. There was nobody shutting off our electricity. There was never a lack of food or housing. It was always okay. And it's not like that down here. We have an epidemic of poverty down here in the rural communities throughout the United States. And the only ones that are coming to help are the Democrats, because we do deliver infrastructure, and we do deliver broadband, and we do deliver electricity, and we do deliver education, and we do deliver, most importantly, broadband, so you can get the Heartland Mamas. Anyway, I'm Heidi Henry. This is the Heartland Mamas. Working on a new website for us and some other things, but every Tuesday and Thursday, 1 p.m., we go live. And then it's released out onto every podcast platform, so catch us there. Murray is still on hiatus, so it's just me. I thank you for listening in today, and I'm hoping you're having a great day. Take care now, everybody. See you later. Bye-bye.